Veronica and I had been childhood sweethearts for 20 years. Everyone assumed we would get married after graduation. However, just when I was about to confess my feelings to her, I was shocked to discover that she had already been secretly seeing someone. She said, "Let me introduce you. This is my boyfriend, Alexander." During the day, she would show off her affection for him right in front of me. And at night, she would repeatedly inform me of which hotel they were going to stay at. She even tried to force me to be the best man at their wedding. I gave a forced smile, turned, and left without a word. I immediately started a relationship with Sarah, cutting ties with Veronica for good. Little did I know, she would later appear in front of me, crying and accusing me. "We were just playing a game. Daniel, how could you betray the bond we've shared for 20 years? Chapter 1. Daniel, the Law family is about to collapse. If we don't form a marriage alliance soon, we'll go bankrupt." My mother called again, the umpteenth time this week. She continued, "I know. You and Veronica have been childhood sweethearts. You like her, and you want to marry her." But, before she could finish, I interrupted her. "Mom, I'm willing to come home and form a marriage alliance." When my mom realized what I had said, she was so happy she couldn't stop smiling. She quickly said she would share the good news with Sarah. "Sarah is my marriage partner, a proper young lady from a prestigious family." I added, "But it'll have to wait for 2 weeks. I grew up in the North City, where I have many friends, and suddenly having to return to South City for the marriage arrangement felt difficult. It was hard to part with so many memories. Besides, I had an upcoming competition, so I couldn't leave right away." My mom said, "That makes sense. You and Veronica are childhood sweethearts, and it would have been natural for you to get married. But because of our family situation, things turned out differently. You'll need some time to handle everything." She understood me well, and after saying this, she hung up the phone. I put my phone away, slipped my hands into my pockets, and gazed at the sunlight outside the floor-to-ceiling windows with a sigh. Because of my family's situation, I had been raised by Veronica's family since I was young. Lou's mother treated me like her own son, and I had always taken care of Veronica, who was a few months younger than me. Veronica was very cute and clingy. Since school, we had always chosen seats together, and she was always by my side. Whether it was going to school or leaving, we always walked together. Aside from going to the bathroom or sleeping, we were almost always together. All the love letters I received in school were intercepted and torn up by Veronica. She even told everyone, "Daniel is mine. Stay away from him." And I never denied it. Everyone assumed that after graduation, we would naturally get married. Even Lou's mother often teased Veronica, saying, "My little treasure, raised with such care, and now she's about to run off with someone." Hearing this, I lowered my head, too afraid to look at Veronica. I still didn't know how Veronica truly felt, and I feared that my suppressed feelings might scare her. Veronica, standing beside me, playfully nudged Lou's mother with her shoulder and said, "Mom, if you keep talking, Daniel's face is going to turn as red as a lobster." At that, Lou's mother laughed and said, "Haha, all right, I won't say more." When graduation was approaching, the campus beauty confessed to me. She stopped me at the school gate, reading a love letter with deep affection. Veronica just happened to see this scene. She angrily turned around and left, and I quickly apologized to the campus beauty before rushing to chase after Veronica. This time, Veronica was especially hard to calm down. In the past, when she got upset, I would take her to eat tiramisu, and she would calm down. But this time, Veronica cried heartbreakingly, throwing herself into my arms and pounding her fists against my chest. I just silently endured, letting her vent her frustration. In that moment, even I, with my usual obliviousness, could feel Veronica's feelings for me. While secretly relieved, I was already planning my confession after graduation. But before I could confess, Veronica suddenly turned and threw herself into someone else's arms. They had met through a club activity. On the very day I was planning to confess, I saw Veronica nestled in Alexander's arms. She turned her head, smiled at me slightly, and said, "Daniel, let me introduce you. This is my boyfriend, Alexander. Wish me luck." I hurriedly tucked the ring box I was holding into my pocket. Veronica saw it and curiously asked, "What's that small box you're holding?" Alexander, following her gaze, looked at the hand I had behind my back, teasing, "Could it be a gift for my birthday? You're planning to surprise me?" I lowered my gaze, hiding the sadness in my eyes, and shook my head. "No, it's just my stuff." It was the gift I had prepared for my confession, symbolizing my desire to offer Veronica eternal love. But now, it seemed Veronica didn't need that love, and there was no need for my confession anymore. I silently kept my feelings hidden and put the engagement ring away as well. At that moment, a magnetic voice came from behind, snapping me back to reality. "Daniel, I'm cutting the cake. Come on, help me sing happy birthday." Alexander, wearing a birthday hat, stood behind me, inviting me with a smile. I just glanced at him, then quickly shifted my gaze, focusing entirely on Veronica. She was wearing a white dress, looking like a princess out of a fairy tale. The sunlight made her face even more radiant and charming. She smiled at me, and the two small dimples on her cheeks were like vintage wine, captivating, but unaware of the effect they had. She said, "Daniel, come over and sing happy birthday to Alexander." I had always been unable to refuse Veronica's requests. With heavy steps, I walked over, stood opposite Veronica, and joined in clapping while singing. After Alexander made his wish with his eyes closed, he opened them and blew out the candles. After cutting the cake, Veronica's phone rang. She took it out and stepped outside onto the balcony to answer the call. Suddenly, Alexander screamed, and crazily threw the cake to the ground, then pointed at me, shouting, "Daniel, what are you doing? Why did you throw my cake? I know, I'm poor, and you look down on me, but Veronica and I are truly in love. Even if you look down on me, you can't ruin my first birthday." Chapter 2. Alexander's voice was loud, and Veronica, who had been on the balcony, immediately hung up the phone when she heard the commotion. She walked into the room. I looked at Veronica and tried to explain. "It wasn't me." Veronica furrowed her brows, glaring at me with cold indifference. She shouted, "Daniel, you've gone too far. Do you know? He's from a poor family. This is Alexander's first birthday. Apologize to him." Hearing this, my heart sank. I hoarsely asked, "Don't you trust me?" After 20 years of friendship, it seemed it couldn't compare to just 3 months of knowing someone else. Seeing Veronica defend Alexander so fiercely broke my heart. Alexander spoke up. "Veronica, don't blame Daniel. I'm sure he didn't mean to do it." He pulled Veronica by the arm and said, "Forget about the cake. Maybe people like me, from poor families, don't even deserve to celebrate a birthday." Upon hearing this, Veronica's frown deepened as she walked toward me. Her expression was cold, and her tone flat as she said, "Apologize to Alexander. Don't make me say it again." My eyes narrowed slightly, as if I couldn't believe the woman before me was the same person who had once clung to me. My eyes felt hot with frustration as I exhaled deeply, trying to keep my voice steady. "I told you, I didn't do it." With that, I turned and walked away. When I reached the gate of the villa, I couldn't hold it in any longer, and my eyes welled up. More than a decade of unspoken love had ended like this. The look of distrust Veronica had given me earlier still haunted my mind, piercing my heart like a dagger. But soon enough, I came to terms with it. Since she had already found someone she loved, it was time for me to return home and take responsibility. The Law family's business in South City had long been facing an economic crisis. My mother had been pushing for an marriage alliance with the Lee family to revive our fortunes. She had brought it up countless times, and even a year ago, they had discussed engagement. But because I loved Veronica, I kept stalling. I believed I could find another way to help the Law family recover, without resorting to marriage. But now, returning to arrange the marriage seemed like the best choice. I was feeling troubled, so I went to meet my brother Kevin to catch up. At the bar, we drank one glass after another. Kevin understood me well, not prying into the details but simply staying by my side, matching my pace with drink after drink. That's what friendship between men is, I suppose, understanding without needing words. Ding ding ding. My phone rang, and I picked it up, excited, thinking it might be Veronica worried about me, asking me to come home soon. But when I saw that the message was from Alexander, my heart sank. I didn't know how he got my number, but it was probably from Veronica. The text from Alexander read, "About the cake incident today, it's just a little warning. I don't care what feelings you have for Veronica, but she's my girlfriend now. Stay away from her, and don't get any strange ideas. But even if you do, you can't beat me. After all, I'm Veronica's true love. She only believes in me." After reading the message, I didn't reply, tossing my phone aside in irritation. I didn't understand how Veronica could be with someone like him. He was poor and scheming, and I couldn't figure out what spell he had cast on Veronica to make her so completely devoted to him. I loved her, so I could see the look in Veronica's eyes when she looked at Alexander. It was an expression of raw, unguarded affection. It was so intense that I couldn't help but feel jealousy rising in my chest. I had been out drinking for 3 hours, but Veronica hadn't called or sent me a single message. If it were before, Veronica wouldn't have been able to go 10 minutes without calling me. Now that she had a boyfriend, she had completely forgotten about me. Her brother. I drank through the night, and it wasn't until Lou Mother grew truly concerned that she came to find me. Looking at me, utterly drunk and slumped over, Lou Mother sighed and said, "I can tell that you two children clearly like each other. How did Veronica suddenly end up with a boyfriend?" She shook her head slowly, and gently backed out of the room, closing the door behind her. As soon as the door clicked shut, I jumped up from the bed, muttering to myself, "Veronica clearly likes me. Why did she suddenly fall in love with someone else? No, I need to ask her about this." With that, I staggered toward Veronica's room, knocking on the door with force. There was no answer. Frowning, I grabbed the doorknob and twisted it gently. The door opened, but the room was empty. Not even a trace that it had been slept in. The bed was neatly made. I stood frozen in place. It was already past 1 in the morning, and Veronica wasn't in her room. Where could she be? Chapter 3. My hands trembling, I fumbled for my phone and dialed Veronica's number in a panic. As soon as the call connected, I urgently asked, "Veronica, where are you? It's so late. Why aren't you home yet?" There was a moment of silence on the other end, before a deep, magnetic voice answered. "Veronica is my girlfriend. Where she goes doesn't need to be reported to you." Alexander's tone was tinged with annoyance. Then, I heard a soft, delicate voice. "Who are you talking to?" Even though her voice was barely above a whisper, I recognized it immediately. It was Veronica's voice. They were still together this late, and as an adult, I knew exactly what was happening. At this point, there was no need for any more explanations. My hands dropped limply at my sides. The alcohol from last night had mostly worn off, leaving behind an overwhelming sense of desolation. Meanwhile, Alexander's lips curled into a faint smirk, the expression of someone who had just won. Veronica could only belong to him now. I couldn't even remember how I got back to my room. I only knew that the summer breeze last night had been sharp and cold. The hope I had barely rekindled was extinguished once again. This time, I was resolute in my decision. Returning home and arranging the marriage was my only option. The next morning, I received a call from the school. The counselor asked me to return to campus to give a speech as an outstanding student representative. After thinking for a moment, I agreed. The counselor had always been good to me and had even helped me gather materials for competitions, so it was a small favor I couldn't refuse. By the time I finished the speech, the sun had already set. I stood outside the school, preparing to take a taxi home. That's when Alexander suddenly appeared out of nowhere. He saw the rolled-up award certificate in my hand and exclaimed with wide eyes, "Daniel, you're amazing. You're the outstanding student representative. Last time I asked the counselor for this, he didn't give it to me, so he gave it to you instead. I've dreamed of getting this award. Can I see your certificate?" On the surface, Alexander seemed to be asking for my permission, but before I could answer, his hand had already grabbed the certificate. This gesture disgusted me, just like how he had taken away my beloved without a word. Frowning, without thinking, I refused. "No, if you want to see it, go get your own." But Alexander was relentless, gripping the certificate tightly. In the struggle, the thin paper of the certificate tore cleanly in half. Looking at the ripped certificate, Alexander chuckled. He moved closer to me and whispered in my ear, "Know your place. You can't compete with me." Just like with the certificate, the same goes for people. Hearing this, a surge of blood rushed to my chest. I clenched my fists and raised my hand, ready to teach this two-faced fool a lesson. But before my fist could land on him, Alexander took a step back and fell to the ground. My heart skipped a beat, and I thought to myself, this is bad. Sure enough, the next moment, Veronica's voice rang out, "Daniel, are you bullying my boyfriend again?" Veronica had gotten out of a taxi and walked over to Alexander's side. She worriedly helped him up. Shooting me a look of icy disdain, she said, "Don't think just because you're my brother, you can treat the people I care about however you want." Alexander held Veronica's hand and shook his head gently, speaking with a soft, affectionate tone. "Veronica, it's my fault. I wanted to see Daniel's award so badly. I pulled too hard, and that's why the certificate tore. Daniel is angry, and he's right to shout at me. After all, he even pushed me." Upon hearing this, Veronica gently stroked Alexander's head, her voice warm as she replied, "It's just a certificate. If it's torn, it's torn. It doesn't compare to how important you are." Then, without a moment's pause, Veronica turned to me, her eyes cold as she spoke distantly. "Alexander is my boyfriend. Please respect him and stop targeting him for no reason. It's just a certificate. What's the big deal if it's torn? No need to push my boyfriend." The indifference and anger in Veronica's eyes made the words I wanted to say get caught in my throat. I couldn't speak, no matter how hard I tried. I thought for a moment and finally gave up. There was no point in explaining anymore. They looked so in love with each other now. Explaining would only make things worse for myself. I pulled my gaze away from the two of them and looked toward the approaching taxi, waving it down and stepping into it. Once inside the car, my phone rang. It was Kevin. "Bro, I heard Veronica has a boyfriend now, and it's not you." I nodded. I wasn't planning to hide it from him. It's just that when we were drinking last night, he didn't ask, so I didn't bring it up. After all, I had no right to talk about it. We were just childhood friends, and there's no rule saying childhood friends have to end up together. Veronica had the right to love whoever she wanted, and if it wasn't me, that was just part of life. Chapter 4. Upon hearing my answer, Kevin couldn't help but sigh. He said, "Ah, what a pity. You two have been the golden couple since childhood. Both of you were top students, the darlings of the teachers, always together when you were around. The air just felt sweet, and yet, Kevin paused, then continued after making sure I wasn't too upset. Yet, you never ended up together. Why is that? Driven by his natural curiosity, Kevin couldn't help but want to know the reason. I fell silent for a moment before responding. I don't know. How can you explain love? Love doesn't follow logic. When you love someone, it's just because you do, no reasons. Just a choice from the heart. Veronica didn't choose me, and that's not her fault. I can't just hold a knife to her neck and demand that she love me just because everyone thinks we should be together. That's clearly not realistic. After some casual chit-chat, Kevin and I ended the call. By then, the car had also pulled up, and I had arrived home. I paid the driver and stepped out of the car. Since I was leaving soon, I figured it was about time I packed my bags. But as I reached the door to my room, I found it wide open. I rushed inside, and immediately spotted Alexander fiddling with a jade pendant, an heirloom from my father. Alexander seemed to know how important this pendant was to me. The next moment, he feigned a slip and let it fall from his hand. Seeing this, I rushed over in an attempt to catch it, but the pendant slipped through my fingers and fell to the ground with a sharp crack, shattering into 2 pieces. At that moment, my anger could no longer be contained. I shouted at Kevin. Who gave you permission to touch my things? I didn't care about how affectionate he and Veronica were, but if he had the audacity to provoke me, I wasn't going to let him get away with it. To my surprise, Kevin didn't show any guilt. Instead, he laughed. He crossed his arms and looked at me nonchalantly, speaking slowly. This is punishment for your shamelessness. Alexander looked at me with disdain, a mocking smile on his face. He sneered. You're just an adopted son of the Liu family. If you know what's good for you, get out. At that moment, Veronica, who had been painting in the study, heard the commotion and came over. Seeing her, Kevin immediately switched to a pitiful expression. Looking up at Veronica with watery eyes, he said, Veronica, could you please ask Daniel to go easy on me? I only wanted to grab your purse. Veronica loved buying handbags. She had so many designer bags that her room couldn't fit them all. Fearing scolding from Liu mother, she had even kept half of them in my wardrobe. Alexander paused for a second, then added, I saw how beautiful that jade pendant was and couldn't resist picking it up, but I slipped and broke it. Daniel looked so mad. Veronica smiled softly and comforted him. It's all right. It's just a pendant. He won't do anything to you. Upon hearing this, Alexander sighed in mock relief and patted his chest. After Veronica finished comforting Alexander, she turned to glare at me, scolding. Daniel, it's just a jade pendant. Why are you getting so upset? My boyfriend is already so timid, and you scared him. Saying that, Alexander played along, hiding behind Veronica like a frightened quail. I glared at Alexander, my hatred unmistakable. I looked down at the broken jade pendant on the floor, then at Veronica, gritting my teeth as I said, your boyfriend just destroyed the only heirloom my father left me. Shouldn't I be angry? I could hardly believe what I was seeing. How had Veronica changed so much? Without asking, she just assumed it was my fault. She used to be the one who always stood by me, back in school, because the school beauty liked me. Several classmates who had been pursuing her for a long time turned against me. Once, they conspired against me, accusing me of being a voyeur and fabricating evidence that was almost impossible to disprove. The whole school believed them, treating me like a plague and avoiding me at all costs. People wouldn't even sit within 2 meters of me. But Veronica trusted me. She always sat by my side, even helping me stand up to those who insulted me. She said, I trust you, Daniel. We've grown up together, and I know what kind of person you are. I will always believe in you. Unfortunately, there was no forever. Veronica's trust in me had disappeared. When she heard my words, Veronica froze for a moment. She looked down at the shattered jade pendant on the floor, blinking a few times. When I was young, my family went through a huge crisis. My father suddenly passed away from a heart attack, and the doctors couldn't save him. But my father still left behind a huge debt. In order to shield me from the debt collectors and allow me to grow up without interference, my mother sent me to live with Liu mother's family. The broken jade pendant on the floor was the only thing my father left me after his death. To me, it held immeasurable significance, and Veronica knew this. Chapter 5. But Veronica only paused for a moment before continuing to scold me. It's just a worthless object. How can anything be more important than a person? Alexander peeked out from behind Veronica, speaking carefully. Daniel, I'm sorry. I didn't know the pendant meant this much to you. If I had known, I wouldn't have touched it. He raised his hand and swore an oath. Veronica, seeing this, grabbed his hand with a tender expression and gently said, It's fine. It's just a small matter. There's no need for you to swear. She then turned to look at me, coldly saying, He's already apologized, so stop being so petty. After saying that, Veronica pulled Alexander away. I could faintly hear them talking quietly as they left. Veronica said, Look at it if you want, but how could you break it? Alexander replied, I'm sorry. I just slipped. I won't do it again. Tonight. Let's go to a hotel. Okay, Veronica responded. Sure. The usual place. Their voices faded, growing quieter and eventually becoming inaudible. In the now empty mansion, I was left alone with red eyes. I bent down to pick up the jade pendant from the floor. I tried to put the shattered pieces together, but the originally flawless jade now had a dark crack in the middle, and no matter what, it couldn't be repaired. Ding ding ding. My phone rang. It was a message from Alexander. The text read, "Don't think I don't know what you feel for Veronica, but unfortunately, she only loves me. If you're smart, you'll leave and not ruin our happiness." After reading the message, I smiled wryly and quickly typed a response. I replied, "Do you think if I showed Veronica the messages you sent me, she'd be happy?" When Alexander saw my message, he immediately panicked. He replied, "What do you want to do?" Then, as if a thought occurred to him, Alexander started laughing again. He sent another message. "I destroyed your father's heirloom, and Veronica didn't say a word. So what do you think she'll do if you show her?" "Nothing. She'll just think you're jealous and petty, and call you a sinister little man. She'll just think you're disgusting." I stared at the words on the screen, feeling a cold wave wash over me. He was right. People can choose to favor whoever they want. I no longer held a place in Veronica's heart, so even if I was in the right, she wouldn't stand by me. With that thought, I silenced my phone, put it in my pocket, and stopped paying attention to the messages from Alexander. I took a deep breath, tried to calm myself down, and started packing my things. Although I had lived here for 20 years, I didn't have many belongings. In less than half an hour, I was finished. When I went out to ship the package, I ran into Veronica and Alexander at the nearby pet store, where they were playing with cats. When Veronica saw the suitcase in my hand, her expression darkened for a moment. She cautiously asked, "Are you leaving?" I didn't stop what I was doing. While paying for the package, I answered her, "My mom loves the silk here, so I'm getting some for her." At this point, things had already progressed so far that there was no need to mention leaving. I was just a stranger now, so quietly leaving was probably for the best. Veronica nodded in understanding, as if relieved. "Your mom always says she loves the silk here. When I'm free, I'll go back with you to visit her." She didn't notice anything strange, wrapping her arm around Alexander's, speaking kindly. Alexander's gaze darkened slightly, and he looked at me with visible displeasure. He was probably thinking, if I couldn't leave yet, then it was time to turn up the heat. I didn't look at them again. I simply said, "It's fine." With that, I didn't stay any longer and turned to leave. Veronica watched me walk away, and for a brief moment, a sharp pain flashed in her heart. Alexander pulled her into his arms, speaking lovingly. "Veronica, it's getting late. Let's go see a movie." Soon, the pain in Veronica's heart dissipated. She smiled and nodded, happily leaving with Alexander. I returned alone to the mansion, standing in the living room, staring blankly for a long time. This place, where I had lived for 20 years, held so many warm and beautiful memories. It was a shame that it was time to leave. Chapter 6. After dinner, I invited my good friends out. I wanted to properly say goodbye to them. The place we chose was the lounge bar we always frequented. One of my friends spoke up. "Daniel, we all thought the first wedding we'd be drinking to after graduation would be yours and Veronica's, but who knew it would be our farewell party instead?" After hearing the news that I was leaving, they were all reluctant to let me go. Each of them was downcast, and they sighed deeply before raising their glasses and drinking in one go. Kevin asked, "Do you really have to go back and fulfill that arranged marriage, to marry a woman you don't love?" Kevin voiced the doubt that was in all their minds, and they all looked at me expectantly, hoping for an answer. My fingers lightly traced the edge of my glass. As I met their hopeful gazes, I fell silent, raised my glass, and downed the strong liquor in one go. A few drops of liquor slid down the corner of my mouth. Nothing more needed to be said. Seeing this, the others didn't press any further. They just accompanied me, quietly enjoying these last moments together. Suddenly, the door to the private room was kicked open with a loud crash. Veronica stormed in furiously and grabbed my collar, shouting, "Daniel, I never thought you were this kind of person." As she spoke, Veronica's gaze swept over the room, and when she saw only men, she furrowed her brows in confusion, then turned to ask, "Where have you hidden that woman?" At this moment, I was completely confused and didn't understand what Veronica was talking about. I asked, "What woman?" Upon hearing this, Veronica's fury reached new heights. She glared at me and shouted, "Are you still pretending? Since Auntie entrusted you to stay at my house, I can't allow you to hire prostitutes." My face immediately turned cold. I shoved Veronica's hand away and almost gritted my teeth as I said, "That's nonsense. The brothers around us tried to defend me. You must have misunderstood. We're all here tonight too." Before they could finish, I interrupted them. I said, "Who told you I've been hiring prostitutes?" I stared hard at Veronica. I realized I no longer recognized her. The Veronica who used to trust me unconditionally was gone. She stammered. It was that classmate. Veronica fumbled, unable to finish a single sentence. Of course, she wouldn't say that it was Alexander who told her that his friend had seen me at Ching Fong Bar, holding a woman in my arms. Connecting that with the reputation of a bar like that, she immediately panicked. She had barely watched half a movie before she stormed out to confront me. The next moment, she raised her voice again. Don't ask who told me. You're not allowed to mess around. If you dare to, I will definitely tell Auntie and make her teach you a lesson. After hearing her words, I only sneered and sat down on the sofa with my glass in hand. I crossed my legs and raised the glass to the others, saying, "Come on, let's keep drinking." Veronica, who was used to being the center of attention, saw me ignore her and immediately became frantic. She rushed up to me, grabbed my glass, and smashed it with a loud crash. She shouted, "Daniel, are you even listening to me?" she yelled. "Ever since I brought Alexander home, you've been acting weird. Now you're giving me attitude." The brothers, hearing this, wanted to speak up for me. They all saw how much I had done for Veronica. Veronica loved to buy various bags, and I would use my scholarship money to buy them for her as birthday gifts. She was afraid to walk alone at night, so throughout high school, I would always walk her home after evening classes. Even after we entered college, if I didn't have class, I would wait for her outside her classroom to walk home with her. Veronica loved a particular crab roe soup dumpling from a shop off campus, and even after graduation, I would buy it for her every morning. Now, for Veronica to accuse me of untrustworthiness, even as an outsider, they could see how heartbreaking it was, but I waved my hand, signaling for them to leave it alone. They backed off. Understanding, I simply glanced at her and, in a cold and distant tone, said, "You're overthinking it." The glass shards from the smashed cup lay on the floor, reflecting Veronica's angry face. She snorted coldly and glanced at the others before saying, "Fine, it better be that way." With that, Veronica left, showing no remorse for ruining my gathering. After she left, Kevin patted me on the shoulder, silently offering comfort. I smiled bitterly, grabbed the glass from the table, and raised it high. To our final moments together. After tonight, it would be hard to meet again. We quietly pushed Veronica's unreasonable outburst aside and continued to enjoy our time drinking together. The sound of clinking glasses echoed throughout the private room, a reflection of the free-spirited youth we once had. Chapter 7. The next morning, I was in my study preparing for the physics competition next week. Without knocking, Alexander walked in, looking around the room with a look of disdain in his eyes. Seeing him act so relaxed, like he owned the place, my anger surged. I gritted my teeth and said, "This is my room, please leave." At my words, Alexander let out a snort of laughter. He said, "Your room? Aren't you just a pitiful guy living at Veronica's place? All the rooms in this villa belong to Veronica, so how did it become yours?" Alexander crossed his arms over his chest, a mocking smile on his face. He added, "Get this straight, I'm Veronica's boyfriend now. You're just an outsider. If you're smart, you'll pack up and leave." Hearing this, I put my pen down and looked up. Staring at him coldly, I replied, my words full of meaning. "You should mind your own business. Otherwise, when your little facade falls apart and Veronica dumps you, you'll have no one to blame but yourself." Alexander frowned, his voice sharp. "What do you mean? Are you planning to tell Veronica? How old are you? And you're still playing these childish games? Don't make me lose respect for you." Alexander's expression was flustered, and he seemed genuinely afraid that I might tell Veronica the truth. But I didn't have the time for that. I was planning to leave anyway, and I only stayed for the physics competition. With the competition coming up, rather than wasting time arguing with an idiot like Alexander, I'd rather spend my time doing more problems and consolidating my knowledge. With that thought in mind, I packed up my things and went to find a quiet study room. When Alexander saw me leave, he couldn't suppress his smug grin. He watched my back and muttered to himself, "As long as I get rid of you, Veronica will be my wife, and I'll get into a rich family." Ever since Lu Mu, Veronica's mother, found out her daughter was dating a man from a lower class, she had been at odds with Veronica. She hadn't been home for a long time. At that time, the large villa was left with only Alexander. He spread his arms wide and breathed in, as if the air of the upper class was now his domain. Feeling like he had ascended to greatness, the day of the physics competition arrived, and Veronica and Alexander sat in the audience cheering for me. I was incredibly talented in physics, and even the professors from the physics department praised me as a rare genius. As expected, I came in first place. When the host announced the good news, Veronica and Alexander hugged each other excitedly, as if they were the ones who won the award. After the awards ceremony, Alexander once again came up to me, complimenting the trophy and pretending he wanted to touch it. I had already seen through his little schemes. I wasn't going to give him a chance to destroy what was rightfully mine. I stuffed the trophy into my pocket and said coldly, I have something to do. I'm leaving. Wait, Veronica called out to me. I paused, and Veronica's voice slowly followed. We're getting engaged, Alexander and I. You know, he's always admired your trophy. When the time comes, could you bring your trophies so he can use them to show off? Her tone didn't sound like a request, but more like an announcement. I sneered and replied, sure. After all, I had no intention of taking the trophies with me. The one who shines is always me. Wherever I am, the awards follow. I don't need a pile of trophies to prove my achievements. Seeing that I didn't object, Alexander beamed and said gratefully, great, thanks Daniel. You're helping me live my dream. When we get engaged, would you be willing to be my best man? There's nothing more painful than this. As a man, Alexander knew exactly where to strike to hurt the most. There's nothing more heartbreaking than being asked to attend your lover's engagement party. Veronica, still holding Alexander's arm, joined in. Alexander doesn't have many friends, so could you be his best man? In just a few words, they forced the task upon me, never even considering asking for my opinion. Their engagement party was a week away, and my mother had arranged for me to meet Sarah also in a week. I refused. I can't. I have something to do that day. But Alexander was relentless. Daniel, even if you don't like me, at least come up with an excuse to turn me down. His eyes were full of disappointment, like a little deer abandoned in the forest. Veronica saw this, her eyes cold as she looked at me and commanded, you have to be our best man. Time passed quickly, and soon the day of the engagement party arrived. I looked at the best man's suit in my hands but couldn't bring myself to wear it. The festive red color seemed to mock my misery. When Alexander saw me hesitating, he lowered his head, as if deeply hurt. He bit his lip and quietly said, Daniel, don't you want to be our best man? I threw the suit aside and coldly replied, yes. The moment I finished speaking, Alexander leaned back and fell to the ground. Lying on the floor, he begged, Daniel, even if you have an issue with me, you shouldn't hit me at my engagement party. Chapter 8. This scene attracted a crowd of guests who quickly gathered around. They began shouting insults at me. You're heartless, causing trouble at an engagement party. People like you don't deserve a good life. Veronica heard the commotion and, holding her pristine white wedding dress, ran over. She helped Alexander off the floor and glared at me with hatred in her eyes. She said, you've gone too far. After speaking, Veronica, with her slender frame, supported the tall and strong Alexander as they walked off together. As I watched this unfold, I thought I would feel a pang of heartache, but in reality, I felt nothing. At that moment, I realized I had truly let go. The passionate feelings I once had in my youth had long since blown away with the wind, no longer existing. After leaving the engagement party, I sent Veronica a text saying, I wish you happiness, then blocked her number. I immediately hailed a taxi to the airport. I was about to say goodbye to the place I had lived for over 20 years. It was still midday, and after a 4-hour flight to the southern city, I would be just in time for dinner with Sarah. After all, she was my marriage partner. I needed to take this seriously. As soon as I turned on my phone after landing, my mother's call came in. I chuckled and answered. She asked, Daniel, have you arrived? I'm at the airport entrance, but I don't see you. I glanced at the exit. It was a weekday, and the airport wasn't too crowded. I quickly spotted a well-dressed woman draped in silk, and I waved at her. My mother noticed me and excitedly waved her arms, pulling over a tall, long-haired beauty to walk towards me. Without needing any introduction, I knew immediately that this woman was Sarah, my marriage partner. I couldn't help but stare at her face. It seemed vaguely familiar, but I couldn't quite place where I had seen her before. My mother noticed my gaze lingering on Sarah and laughed as she playfully tapped me on the head, saying, you can't just stare at a girl like that when you meet her. If you scare her off, I'll blame you. I awkwardly scratched the back of my head. Sarah also shyly lowered her head, a hint of pink flushing her cheeks. I apologized. Sorry, I just feel like I've seen you somewhere before. Sarah smiled sweetly and said, it's okay. Seeing the awkwardness between us, my mother decided to break the ice by taking us to play one of those popular group games. When Sarah and I stood at the entrance of the escape room, our faces were full of confusion. I said, Mom, is it too sudden for me and Miss Lee to play this on our first meeting? Sarah said, Mom, I'm scared of these things. Do we really have to play? My mother eagerly nodded and, using both hands and feet, pushed us inside. While pushing, she said, of course, you have to play. How else will you develop feelings for each other? Meanwhile, back at the engagement party, the time had come for Veronica and Alexander to exchange rings. As Alexander was about to slip the wedding ring onto Veronica's finger, she instinctively looked down at the guests but couldn't find that familiar face. She frowned, not paying attention to the fact that it was her engagement party, and shouted, where is Daniel? Where is he? The guests exchanged glances, and without saying anything, they shook their heads. Veronica became anxious and turned to Alexander, questioning him. Did you do something? At that moment, Veronica's gaze toward Alexander was cold, filled with anger, and completely devoid of affection. Seeing her angry, Alexander instinctively swallowed nervously and tried to remain calm, saying, I didn't do anything. What could I do? I've just been cooperating with you. Upon hearing this, Veronica paused for a moment. She stared at Alexander with such intensity that it seemed like she wanted to burn a hole through his face. She yelled hysterically. Who else could it be? You'd better pray that Daniel shows up right now, or we're done. Alexander's face turned pale with fear, but he forced out, It wasn't me. Veronica ignored him and, lifting her wedding dress, ran off the stage. She began frantically calling me on her phone, but soon realized that I had blocked her number. Unable to reach me, Veronica was about to go crazy. In a fit of desperation, she grabbed a nearby guest's phone and dialed the number she had memorized, but the call still wouldn't go through. The phone rang for a long time but no one answered. The staff outside the escape room, noticing the phone ringing incessantly, quietly approached and muted it. The guest whose phone was taken, annoyed and not tolerating her behavior, snatched it back and walked away. Veronica, frustrated, shouted, What are you doing? Don't you have any compassion? The person I love the most is missing, and you won't even lend me your phone. The guest frowned and muttered, Crazy, you're already engaged to another man, and yet you're still claiming to love Daniel. What a lie. After saying that, the guest shoved the phone back into his pocket and walked off. Veronica's eyes instantly filled with tears, and they began to fall uncontrollably. She screamed in agony. You don't understand anything. Chapter 9. There will never be anyone in this world who loves Daniel more than I do. Seeing Veronica cry, Alexander reached out to embrace her. He said, Veronica, a man like him doesn't deserve your love. Look at me, won't you? I love you too. Today is our engagement party. Can we continue? This was the result of all his efforts. He had worked so hard to push me away, so hard to get engaged to Veronica. How could he give it up now? Veronica looked at Alexander, then slapped him hard across the face. With regret, she said, Ugh, I shouldn't have listened to you. I shouldn't have gone along with this act. Now Daniel is gone, completely gone. Are you satisfied? After speaking, Veronica lifted her wedding dress and ran out, leaving Alexander standing there holding the ring. The entire engagement party instantly turned into a joke. The guests sighed and left, feeling uncomfortable. Alexander stood in the center of the hall, watching Veronica's retreating figure, gritting his teeth in anger. He clenched his fists and muttered, What am I lacking compared to Daniel? Why can't you love me? We were so close, just one step away from getting engaged. After leaving, Veronica used all her connections to search for my whereabouts, but it was as if I had disappeared into thin air. There was not a single clue. I had told my friends not to reveal my location, so when Veronica asked them, they all shook their heads, saying they didn't know. Veronica stood helplessly in my room, looking at everything she was familiar with, her eyes reddening. She rummaged through my wardrobe, hoping to find some trace of me, and accidentally came across a small box. Inside were photographs of her, photos I had taken. Under the photos was a small note. On the bridge, you were looking at the scenery, while I was looking at you. Love has no origin, but once it starts, it runs deep. She gasped, covering her mouth in surprise. So Daniel has always liked me. After realizing this, Veronica searched even harder for me. A whole day passed, and Veronica had practically turned the whole city upside down. But still, there was no news of me. She had people check all the transportation records, but my name didn't appear anywhere. Unable to hold back any longer, Alexander said, This city isn't that big. If you can't find him inside or outside the city, he might already be dead. Upon hearing this, Veronica swiftly raised her hand and slapped him across the face. She shouted, What are you? Get out. Don't ever show yourself to me again, or I'll slap you every time I see you. Veronica's family had power and influence, and these words weren't empty threats. Alexander's face turned pale, and he fell silent, but he still refused to leave Veronica's side. He grabbed her hand and begged, Veronica, I'm sorry. Everything I said earlier was out of anger. I just love you so much. Please don't send me away. Okay, if you do, I'll have no way to live. Alexander's father was an alcoholic and gambler, deep in debt. In an attempt to pay it off, Alexander started gambling himself. He thought that with his smart brain, he could win big in the casino, pay off the debts, and give his mother a better life. But he fell into an endless abyss. His debts grew larger and larger, and he couldn't repay them no matter what. To avoid being beaten and threatened by debt collectors, he resorted to borrowing from every platform available, and the interest kept snowballing. He couldn't pay it back either. A few months ago, Alexander had seen Veronica crying on the roadside. It was well known that Veronica and I liked each other, but it seemed like only the two of us were unaware of it. Recalling the time when the school beauty confessed to me, Alexander immediately understood why Veronica was crying. He quietly approached, crouched beside her, and softly said, "Do you want to know if Daniel likes you?" At that moment, Veronica was like a drowning person grabbing onto a lifeline. She nodded eagerly, tears still in her eyes. Alexander, in a gentlemanly manner, gently wiped away the tears from her eyes and softly said, "It's simple. Be with me and see if he gets jealous. If he really loves you, he won't be able to resist confessing." Veronica thought for a moment, then nodded in agreement. After getting together with Alexander, Veronica was generous with him to ensure he fully cooperated with her plan. She gave him an allowance of at least 100,000 a month. With this money, Alexander's financial pressure eased significantly. If he lost Veronica, the golden goose, he would be finished. Seeing that Veronica remained unmoved, Alexander suddenly kneeled in front of her. Tears welled up in his eyes, and his face reddened as he looked at her and said, "I'll help you find Daniel. Please don't drive me away." "Okay." This plea touched Veronica's heart. Her eyes lit up, and she asked, "Can you really find him?" Alexander nodded and said, "Give me $1 million, and I'll tell you." As the saying goes, a man has his tricks. While Veronica, a rich young lady, thought of using connections to search through transport records, Alexander, an ordinary person, knew better. He recalled the incident at the courier center and realized that it had been no coincidence. He falsely claimed I was his friend and that there was a problem with the parcel. The shop had sent him the surveillance footage of the parcel before it was shipped. When checking the contents, Alexander found that the suitcase didn't contain silk fabric, but rather my clothes and daily necessities. After telling Veronica what he had discovered, he added his guess. He must have sent his luggage ahead. He's gone back to the southern city. Upon hearing this, Veronica suddenly thought of something. She broke into a smile, turned, and rushed out, hailing a cab to the airport. This time, it was her mistake. She had to find me, explain everything to me, and express her feelings. Chapter 10. Upon entering the escape room, the pitch-black environment made Sarah feel uneasy. She clutched my shirt nervously. I could sense Sarah's rapid breathing behind me, so I intentionally slowed my pace, maintaining a distance that wasn't too close but also not too far. I asked, "Is this your first time here?" Raising my voice, I spoke to Sarah, trying to distract her and ease her fear. Sarah's eyes widened in alarm as she scanned the surroundings, fearing a ghostly face might suddenly pop up. After hearing my question, she took a moment to respond hesitantly. "Why yeah, it's my first time." I shielded Sarah with my sturdy arm and sighed, complaining, "My mom really doesn't think things through, making us do this, not even considering if we're scared." Upon hearing this, Sarah peeked out from behind me and asked softly, "Are you scared too?" I chuckled lightly, lowering my voice and whispering in her ear, "Yeah, but I have a trick. Just imagine their faces as cabbages, and suddenly, they're not scary at all." At this, Sarah giggled, and most of her fear faded away. We laughed together, and as we worked through the puzzle, our bond grew stronger little by little. I thought Sarah was wonderful, well-mannered and proper, like someone sculpted carefully from a mold. This kind of goodness made me feel protective. In contrast to Veronica, who had been spoiled and pampered from a young age, Sarah's every action felt perfectly measured. She was so gentle but always gave off a sense of distance. In that moment, watching Sarah laugh heartily in front of me, or scream when seeing the NPCs, I finally felt like she was real, like she was a living, breathing person. At that moment, I understood my mother's good intentions. Escape rooms really are a great way to deepen feelings. In just 1 hour, I felt that the distance between Sarah and I had lessened. Before leaving the room, I asked Sarah, "Why did you agree to the arranged marriage?" To me, it seemed like an unbelievable thing. The law group was in disarray. My mom had spent a lot of money and effort to clean up the mess left by my father, nearly emptying the entire Law family fortune, and marriage alliance with me would bring Sarah no benefit. Yet she would have to invest a lot to help revive the Law group. After hearing my question, Sarah paused for a moment before smiling. Her eyes sparkled, and at that moment, she looked at me as if I were the only person in the world. She said, "Because of you." Just then, I reached the door of the escape room. The staff member stepped forward and handed me my phone, respectfully saying, "Sir, your phone has been ringing continuously. To avoid disturbing other guests, I put it on silent for you. Please check it." I took the phone and nodded. Turning to Sarah, I asked, "Sorry, Miss Lee, I didn't hear what you just said. Could you say it again?" Sarah smiled politely and replied softly, "It's nothing. Just check your phone. You wouldn't want to miss an important call." I nodded and unlocked the phone. There were countless missed calls, 5 from Veronica, and several from unknown numbers. After glancing at them, I turned off the phone. I said, "Nothing important. Let's go." Sarah gave me a suspicious look and asked, "Are you sure everything's fine? The staff said your phone had been ringing non-stop." I smiled slightly, slipping the phone into my pocket and answered, Really, it's nothing. Just some unimportant people. The person I once couldn't stop thinking about. Now reduced to someone I considered insignificant. I chuckled coldly in my heart as I walked ahead. I said, Miss Lee, let's go. My mom's still waiting outside. Sarah nodded obediently and followed my lead. My mom was sitting outside, sipping coffee. As soon as she saw Sarah and me walk out, her eyes lit up. Looking at us laughing and chatting, she quickly invited us to dinner. She said, You must be hungry. I know a great barbecue place. Sarah, you have to try it. Sarah came from a scholarly family, where everything was arranged for her. She had never eaten something like barbecue. However, not wanting to disappoint my mom, she hesitantly nodded. I watched this scene with mixed emotions, casting a complicated glance at Sarah before quickly looking away. Chapter 11. After we arrived at the barbecue restaurant, Sarah, who had never been to such a place before, seemed a bit uncomfortable. My mom, seeing her unease, smiled and pulled Sarah over to sit beside her, gently reassuring her with a smile. Sarah, while exotic delicacies are nice, there's something special about the flavors of the streets as well. Today, I'm treating you, so you must try something different. Sarah smiled politely and quietly sat down. She quietly observed my mom's actions. When my mom took a small bowl to scoop some sauce, Sarah did the same. When my mom scooped a spoonful of chili, Sarah followed suit. When my mom took some green pepper sauce, so did Sarah. When they returned to their seats, Sarah's bowl was filled with red oil. My mom, surprised, said, Wow, Sarah, I didn't expect you to be able to handle spicy food. I thought people from the South City didn't eat spicy food. Sarah was a little puzzled by this comment and sat there, blinking in confusion. After a moment, she nodded and said, I just wanted to try. I had prepared a milder dish and, upon hearing their conversation, I spoke up to explain. My mom's from Sichuan. She's been eating spicy food since she was a kid. Sarah smiled in understanding. My mom, who had been fond of spicy food for years, eagerly began grilling the pork belly on the wire rack. Once it started sizzling and the oil was bubbling, she picked up the grilled meat with chopsticks, dipped it in the sauce, and placed it in a lettuce leaf, rolling it up and happily eating it. Sarah, seeing this, tried to follow my mom's lead, but after just a small bite, she was overwhelmed by the spiciness. Seeing this, I quickly handed her the glass of cool water that had been prepared earlier. Sarah gratefully took it and drank deeply. My mom saw Sarah's face redden from the spice and laughed heartily. She said, It looks like Sarah isn't quite used to this. Sarah, thinking that my mom didn't like her, quickly tried to explain. She stammered, I can. Before she could finish, I interrupted her. Try this instead. I placed the milder dish that I hadn't touched yet in front of Sarah. Sarah looked at the much plainer dish and smiled. She tried a bite, and instead of the spicy burn, she tasted the simple fragrance of grilled meat. Seeing that she was enjoying it, I took the initiative to grill some more meat for her and placed it on her plate when it was done. My mom, noticing this, narrowed her eyes with a smile and teased. Ah, my good son, you finally come home, and now you won't even grill me some meat. Is this what happens when you get a wife? You forget about your mother. Hearing this, Sarah blushed, feeling a bit awkward and unsure of what to say. I furrowed my brow slightly and spoke softly. Mom, you're a regular at this place. You don't need me to take care of you. Then I turned to Sarah and gently said, It's okay. My mom's just a little carefree. You don't need to mind her. Upon hearing this, Sarah covered her mouth and laughed. My mom shot me a playful, resentful glance, but I didn't pay it any attention, as I was used to it by now. The next moment, my mom didn't say anything more and continued eating, though her eyes never left Sarah and me. Watching the growing connection between us, my mom couldn't help but feel pleased, unconsciously eating a few more pieces of meat. After dinner, my mom handed Sarah over to me and asked me to take her home. She quickly ran to the car and called out to me. Daniel, Sarah's place isn't far. It's just 2 kilometers away. You two can walk, digest, and chat a bit. I smiled helplessly. She might as well have just said, Go build some emotional connection already. But since we were already planning to get married, I didn't object and politely invited Sarah to walk with me. Sarah had been worried about not seeing me after dinner, so she was happy to walk with me and get a few more moments together. She nodded happily. We walked together across the Pearl Bridge, the cool breeze dispersing the summer heat. I couldn't help but ask. I never expected you, a young lady from a well-off family, would be willing to walk. Someone like Veronica would never walk anywhere. She'd need a car to take her even for a 1-kilometer trip, Veronica once said. Princesses don't walk, and if they do, a knight carries them. Hearing my words, Sarah laughed softly. She said, Because I'm walking beside you, so I'm willing. At her words, I stopped in my tracks. Under the dim streetlights, Sarah's face looked delicate and beautiful. The breeze tousled her hair, which brushed against my face, teasing my heart. I turned to face her, looking into her eyes, and asked seriously, "Do we know each other?" Chapter 12. Sarah nodded, then after a while, shook her head. She bit her lip, feeling a bit embarrassed, and said, "You might not remember who I am, but I've always remembered you. You were the only light in my life." Sarah had attended high school in North City. She was pure and cute, and many boys at school liked her, including some local tough guys. One day after school in her second year, as usual, Sarah was walking home, but when she reached a small alley, a group of these tough guys, who had been waiting for her, cornered her. At that moment, she felt scared, terrified, and helpless. She prayed that someone would suddenly appear and save her, but she knew full well that on the route she had walked countless times, there was rarely anyone who passed through this particular alley. In her despair, she even thought about ending it all. At that moment, Daniel appeared. Daniel, with a straw in his mouth and a box of milk in his hand, happened to witness the scene. He shouted loudly, scaring off the thugs. Sarah, crouching in the dark corner, watched Daniel shining under the streetlight, her heart racing uncontrollably. Daniel squinted his eyes, unable to clearly see Sarah's face, and tentatively asked, "Are you okay? Do you need me to walk you home? I'm free right now." Sarah, still in shock, hugged herself tightly and replied, "I'm fine. I called my family. They'll come pick me up. Thank you." Daniel nodded and turned to leave. When Sarah's uncle arrived to pick her up, she trembled as she stood up and rushed into his arms. As she cried in her uncle's embrace, her eyes briefly caught a shadow against the wall. The shadow was holding a rectangular box, and after seeing Sarah was safe, it turned and walked away. Sarah peered out from her uncle's embrace, glancing at the direction the shadow had gone. She recognized it was Daniel's figure. He had stayed behind, worried the thugs might return, and had been watching over her. Sarah was deeply grateful, and the next day, she went around asking about him. She soon learned that he and Veronica were childhood sweethearts, a match made in heaven. Coincidentally, her parents also wanted her to transfer back to South City, and after that, they lost all contact. Sarah had thought she would never see Daniel again, but it seemed that fate was listening to her wishes. When the Law family came to propose a marriage, she was overjoyed. Though she knew the Law family had financial troubles, she was still happy, because it meant she could see her hero again. Even if her parents disagreed, she decided she would marry him. When Sarah mentioned the alley incident, I suddenly slapped my forehead as if realizing something. I said, "So that girl was you? It seems we really are quite fated." Now I finally understood why Sarah looked so familiar. I had already met her before. I suddenly felt that maybe this arranged marriage wasn't such a bad thing after all. Sarah blushed and nodded. She looked at me, biting her lip, and after thinking for a long time, finally couldn't hold back and asked, "So, what about you and Veronica? I heard you two are childhood sweethearts, and the whole school says you're a perfect match." Hearing this, I let out a deep sigh. The past flooded my mind like a tidal wave. I closed my eyes, then reopened them after a brief pause. I looked at Sarah and said, "In this world, being childhood sweethearts doesn't necessarily mean you have to be together. You also said it yourself. Those are just rumors from the bored people at school. For us, we're just like regular brother and sister. We never really started anything, and even our eventual separation wasn't exactly graceful." When Sarah heard this, her tense heart relaxed a lot. She took a deep breath and, gathering courage, asked, "Daniel, is there any possibility that you might like me?" Under the dim streetlight, Sarah looked up, nervously clutching the hem of her dress, cautiously asking about her feelings. I looked down at Sarah, her long eyelashes trembling as shadows were cast on her face by the light. Instead of answering, I asked her back, "What about you? Do you like me?" Sarah looked at me earnestly and said with determination, "Yes, I've liked you for a long time." It was as if she had finally revealed a secret that had been tightly held in her heart. The tension in her mind instantly relaxed. Now, it was my turn to feel nervous. I had never considered that Sarah might like me, because, in my own eyes, there was nothing about me that would be worth a lady like her. From South City, liking. When I heard Sarah confess, my pupils dilated in surprise, and I didn't know how to respond. Sarah also noticed my awkwardness and didn't pressure me for an immediate answer. She just smiled, lifted her foot, and began walking ahead. She said, "Come on, take me home. I'm getting a little tired. I want to sleep." And Mrs. Lee said you'll take me out all day tomorrow. Sarah seemed excited, like a little sunbeam, which made me relax as well. I smiled, lifting my lips in amusement, and followed her as we continued chatting about all sorts of things. Chapter 13. After sending Sarah home, I returned to my own place. My mom had already gone to bed early for her beauty sleep, and when I got home, only my neatly made bed and blanket awaited me. My luggage, which I had sent over earlier, was quietly placed by the side of the bed. My mom always respected my privacy and never went through my things. I felt content, and after washing up, I lay down and quickly fell into a deep sleep under the covers. The next morning, I wasn't woken up by the alarm clock but by the warm sunlight streaming through the window. I had just gotten out of bed when my phone rang. I unplugged the charging cable and picked up the phone from the nightstand. Seeing Kevin's name on the screen, I immediately answered the call. Kevin told me that Veronica had been asking around about me. They had done exactly as I asked and hadn't revealed a single detail about me. But Veronica seemed like she was in a daze, as though she had lost her mind. They felt sorry for her. I just chuckled and told them not to interfere anymore. Veronica and I were already a thing of the past. After breakfast, my mom urged me to go out and spend time with Sarah. I took Sarah to do many things she had always wanted to do but hadn't had the chance to. Sarah was very happy. In the evening, I once again sent Sarah home. When we passed the bridge, I saw a familiar figure again. Daniel. Hearing that familiar, playful voice, my back stiffened for a moment. I turned around and, as I expected, Veronica was standing behind me. Veronica frowned and stormed over, pointing at Sarah and demanding, "Who is she?" Sarah had met Veronica before, so she immediately recognized her. She didn't say anything, just quietly watched me, curious about how I would introduce her. Veronica, with tears in the corners of her eyes, looked at me bitterly and asked, "We've only been apart for 2 days, and you've already hooked up with a new girl." Huh. I was surprised by Veronica's sudden appearance. I didn't know how she had found me. Even if she knew I had returned to South City, how did she find this exact location in such a big city? But honestly, I wasn't interested in that. I looked at Veronica coldly and replied, "Please mind your language. We were never in a relationship, so how could we have broken up? We're just ordinary siblings, nothing more." Hearing this, Veronica screamed, covering her ears, "No way, I don't want to be your sister." With that, Veronica rushed forward and shoved Sarah. She sneered and said, "Where did this fox come from? Let me warn you, if you keep clinging to my Daniel, I'll make you regret it." I quickly steadied Sarah, and after she stood firmly, I turned to face Veronica, gritting my teeth. "Veronica, show some respect. This is my fiancée, your future sister-in-law. Please recognize your position. If you dare to do anything to hurt Sarah, I won't let you get away with it." This was the first time Veronica had ever seen me so angry. She shook her head in disbelief and cried out, "Sister-in-law, you're telling me this is your fiancée, a woman you've known for just 1 or 2 days? I won't accept it." Veronica pointed at Sarah, her eyes full of disdain. She said, "I've known Daniel for 20 years, from childhood until now. Can you even compare to that? If you back off now, you can still save some face. Don't wait until he dumps you and you regret it." I couldn't take it any longer. I stood in front of Sarah, frowning as I glared at Veronica. "When did you start acting like this?" I asked. As if my words had lit a fuse in Veronica's heart, she started laughing angrily. "Acting like this? You're saying I'm acting like this? When you pampered me unconditionally, you didn't say that. You said I was innocent, carefree, and bold. Now that you've met this fox, suddenly I'm the one acting like this. Huh." My anger was rising with every word. I narrowed my eyes and spoke slowly. "Shouldn't you be preparing for your wedding with Alexander right now? What gives you the right to interfere in my life? And as for the woman I've chosen, I don't need your approval." With that, I turned and grabbed Sarah's hand, pulling her along as I walked away. Sarah stood there dazed, the words I had said still echoing in her mind. She softly asked, "Did you really mean it when you said I was the one you've chosen?" Chapter 14. Upon hearing Sarah's question, I stopped in my tracks. I bent down, flicked her little forehead with my finger, and chuckled. "You really have a big heart. After being scolded for so long, you only care about what I said just now." Sarah looked up at me with wide, sparkling eyes. She said firmly, "Of course, I care. You're the person I like, so of course I care about what you say. As for Veronica, she's probably just jealous. I can tell, she likes you. As a woman, she understood the signs of love, jealousy, sudden irritability, rejecting all other women around her love interest. She'd get angry, act spoiled, and want the person she loved to protect her. And Veronica, whether through her words or actions, had written her feelings for me all over her face. But she didn't understand what had happened to make things between us so unpleasant now. Hearing this, I shook my head and smiled, denying her words. Impossible. She's already engaged to Alexander. How could she like me? She's probably just driven by possessiveness, thinking I should revolve around her. Once I step away, she gets upset. Sarah tilted her head and looked at me, noticing the lingering sadness in my eyes. She opened her mouth, wanting to say something, but in the end, she didn't. She thought maybe my reluctance to approve the marriage arrangement had something to do with Veronica. The evening breeze carried a chill, causing a shiver to run through me. I gently patted Sarah's head and said softly, "All right, don't think too much about it. The situation with Veronica is complicated. And I don't know how to explain it to you. Honestly, I didn't know how to explain it either. Unrequited love, the abandoned confession, over 2 decades of love cloaked under the guise of brotherly affection, and the deep trust issues that had shattered everything. Sarah stood quietly, listening to me. As I looked at her, my heart softened. She was such a good girl, and I didn't want to let her down. I reached out, gently grasping her shoulders. Sarah, don't worry. Since I've chosen you, I'll be wholeheartedly devoted to you. If you need reassurance, feel free to check my phone anytime. If you have any questions, you can ask me anything. I'll have no secrets from you. Sarah, feeling the warmth from my hands on her shoulders, smiled brightly, her face lighting up with happiness. She furrowed her brows mischievously and looked at me with a playful glint in her eyes, whispering, I do have a question I'd like to ask you. I quietly waited, watching her with curiosity. Sarah leaned in slowly and planted a quick kiss on my cheek. Her eyes curved into a joyful smile as she asked sweetly, Do you think you'll ever fall for me? In that moment, I felt a rush of warmth and heat on my cheek. I stood there in a daze, my feet frozen to the ground as if nailed to the spot. Seeing Sarah's retreating figure, my heart was racing wildly. I clutched my chest, feeling the strong, steady rhythm of my heart, and just when she kissed my cheek, I felt my heart stop for a moment. It was a strange sensation, like the long-awaited rainfall after a drought. In that instant, I realized, maybe, just maybe, I was starting to fall for Sarah, the girl I'd only known for a day or two. Only when I saw Sarah's figure disappear up the stairs did I slowly turn and walk back. But to my surprise, Veronica was still standing there, looking just as agitated and wronged as before. Out of a sense of humanitarianism, I coldly asked, Where's your hotel? Let me take you back. It's not safe for a woman to be out alone this late. Veronica blinked, shaking her head. She smiled and came up to hook her arm around mine. Murmuring an apology in a soft voice, she said, I'm sorry. I was just too anxious earlier. That's why I acted like that. I promise it won't happen again. Can you forgive me? Her eyes were moist, looking at me like a frightened deer lost in the forest, but I felt no sympathy. I had already made up my mind to be responsible for Sarah, and I wouldn't let Veronica cross the line again. I remained expressionless and didn't say a word, keeping a safe distance from her. In my heart, Sarah was already the woman I had chosen. No one, not even Veronica, could slander or harm her, even if she had once been the one I pampered and adored. Seeing my cold reaction, Veronica started crying even harder. She bit her lip and looked at me with pleading eyes, saying, I didn't book a hotel. It's so late, and I have nowhere to stay. Can you take me home? We've known each other since we were kids, so you can't refuse me, right? Chapter 15. Without thinking, I immediately refused. I said, No, I'll book a hotel for you right now. With that, I took my phone out of my pocket to call a hotel, but Veronica quickly snatched my phone from my hand, skillfully unlocked it, and dialed my mom's number. Before I had a chance to stop her, the call connected. My mom's voice came from the other end. Daniel, why are you calling me so late? Is something wrong? Veronica put the phone on speaker and leaned in, speaking in a sweet voice. Auntie, I came to South City and wanted to visit you, but it's so late, and I couldn't get a hotel. Can I stay at your place? After hearing this, my mom smiled and nodded, saying, Of course, you grew up with us like a sibling. Don't be shy, our home is your home. They chatted for a while before hanging up. Veronica smiled playfully as she came up to me. See, your mom already agreed. Let's go home now. Hearing this, I darkened my expression and walked away in big strides. Veronica quickly followed behind, shouting, Wait for me. At the Law family villa, my mom, draped in a silk shawl, was sitting at the dining table waiting. When she saw Veronica come in, she greeted her with a smile. It's so late. I'm sure you haven't had dinner yet. I had Mary make some home-cooked dishes. I don't know if they'll suit your taste, though. Veronica, acting completely at ease, sat down and began chatting with my mom. I was a bit puzzled. My mom clearly knew that she had once had feelings for Veronica and that I was now about to marry Sarah. So why invite her over? It's always easy to invite a guest, but hard to send them away. I had a feeling the next few days wouldn't be peaceful. Sure enough, the next morning, Veronica, now acting like a little sister, demanded that I buy her crab roe soup dumplings. Her sharp voice echoed through the entire villa. Veronica stood at the door, hands on her hips, demanding, I don't care. You have to buy me crab roe soup dumplings. You always buy them for me, and since I haven't had them the past couple of days, I feel like something's missing. I had just woken up, rubbed my tired eyes, and frowned. If you want them, let Mary make them for you. Mary was a highly skilled housekeeper that my mom hired, a master of every cuisine and pastry imaginable. If you could think of it, she could make it. But Veronica wasn't satisfied with that answer. She insisted that I go out and buy them for her. With tears in her eyes, she cried out, "You've changed. You used to always do whatever I asked." Even with my normally calm temper, I couldn't stand her constant pestering anymore. I clenched my teeth, glared at her, and spoke in a low voice. "Please don't take my kindness toward you for granted. Also, you're already engaged. You should keep your distance from men." I glanced pointedly at Veronica's pajamas, which were so revealing they made the situation even more awkward. Veronica, however, didn't seem to care at all. She smiled and walked into my room, gazing at me with a mischievous grin. "Are you jealous? Well, I've got some good news for you. My engagement with Alexander is off, and I'm not marrying him anymore. I only want to marry you." Having learned from her previous mistake, Veronica now knew that love shouldn't be kept hidden. She had to express it loud and clear, but when I heard her sudden confession, I didn't feel happy at all. Instead, I froze with a cold expression. I said, "I'm not interested in your situation with Alexander. I'm about to marry Sarah, and I hope you can bless us." With that, I threw on my jacket and walked out, not turning back no matter how much Veronica called out. When I was almost at the door, Veronica rushed after me. At that moment, my mom came out of the kitchen with a glass of milk. She stopped Veronica. "Veronica, let's have a talk." Hearing this, Veronica paused and obediently followed my mom to sit down by the floor-to-ceiling windows, where the soft, warm sunlight of the morning bathed them. My mom, always direct, looked at Veronica and asked, "Veronica, do you like Daniel?" Veronica didn't try to hide anything. She confidently nodded and admitted, "Yes, I like Daniel." Upon hearing this, my mom's expression grew complicated. She frowned and asked, "But I heard you were already engaged a couple of days ago. Daniel and Sarah are about to get married. So what exactly do you mean by saying this now?" Veronica bit her lip, paused for a moment, and then said firmly, "Auntie, my engagement with Alexander was a misunderstanding. I'll find a chance to explain it properly. Daniel and Sarah don't have any real feelings for each other, and they can't get married. Daniel's wife can only be me." Chapter 16. My mom, who always had a good temper, was also angered by this. She slammed the table and said, "Outrageous. Do you think my son is someone you can summon at will and cast aside just as easily? My son and Sarah are very close right now, so if you have any sense, you'd better leave for North City right away." Veronica, however, wasn't intimidated by my mom's outburst. Instead, she smiled. She stood up and politely spoke. "Auntie, I don't mean any harm. I just want to pursue my own love. If, as you say, they're deeply in love, then there's no need for you to worry about me, right?" With that, Veronica turned and walked away. She had made up her mind. This time, she would not back down. She would boldly express her love for me. Veronica couldn't lose me. We were childhood sweethearts, the couple everyone envied. In the end, we would definitely be together. Just as she stepped out the door, Veronica's phone rang. It was Alexander calling. As soon as she picked up, Alexander's urgent voice came through. "Veronica, can you help me, please? The loan sharks have come to my door, and they said if I don't pay up, they'll cut off my hands. Please, remember all the times I've helped you. Give me 500,000, will you?" Veronica frowned when she heard this. "Didn't I already give you 1 million? Did you spend it all already?" Alexander coughed, saying, "It's my fault. I got carried away and gambled again. I swear, this is the last time." Veronica's mood soured, and she snapped, "That's your problem, not mine. I'm not your ATM, so don't come to me for money. Also, Daniel leaving has everything to do with you. Don't think I don't know about your little tricks. Instead of asking me for money, you should be worrying about how you'll deal with my revenge when I get back." With that, Veronica hung up the phone. On the other end, Alexander cursed when he heard the busy tone. "Ugh, this brainless love fool. Who does she think she is to talk to me like that? I'll make her pay for this." As soon as he finished speaking, a few loan sharks standing nearby shot him a menacing glance. "Oh, so you owe money and you're still acting tough. Who are you planning to make pay?" Alexander quickly kneeled down and begged for mercy. "Brothers, I was wrong. I wasn't talking about you." The loan shark sneered, grabbed a fruit knife, and waved it menacingly at Alexander's face, shouting, "Where's the money? I'm not listening to your excuses. Pay up." Unable to pay, Alexander was beaten badly, spitting blood before they finally let him go. That evening, Sarah texted me saying she was at the office, so I waited downstairs for her to finish work. After everyone else had left the company, Sarah finally walked out, holding a stack of files. She had just started taking over the company and still had a lot to learn, so she had to bring a ton of paperwork home to study. When she saw me, she immediately smiled brightly. She asked, "What are you doing here?" I walked up, naturally taking the files from her hands and holding her hand with my other, gently saying, "As your boyfriend, It's perfectly normal for me to pick you up from work." Upon hearing this, Sarah's eyes lit up. She asked, "Does this mean you're accepting me?" I nodded but then shook my head. I said, "I wouldn't say I'm accepting you, but I've realized that my heart can't help but beat for you. It's my honor that you want to be my girlfriend. I owe you a romantic confession ceremony." I knew I owed Sarah that. Having been hesitant for so long, after dinner, we went to a movie, and then I took Sarah home as usual. When we reached the familiar bridge, we both froze in surprise at what we saw. The bridge was covered with bright red rose petals, and colorful lights hung on both sides, with banners reading, "I love you" on every street lamp. A little girl ran up to us and handed me a bouquet of roses still covered in dew. As soon as I took the flowers, she quickly ran off. I was confused by the scene and instinctively handed the bouquet to Sarah. She took the flowers and smelled them, complimenting, They smell so good. Is this your idea of a romantic gesture?" She smiled, feeling like the happiest woman in the world at that moment. The man she'd always loved was finally confessing to her. I glanced at the rose petals on the ground, then at Sarah, and shook my head in confusion. This wasn't me. I had no idea what was going on. Seeing me deny it, Sarah laughed. She thought that with the rose petals, colorful lights, and banners, I must have put a lot of effort into this. Since I was denying it, she assumed there was a bigger surprise waiting. She didn't want to spoil my intentions, so she pretended not to know. She said, "Well, in that case, let's walk across the bridge and see what's waiting for us." I nodded and took Sarah's hand as we walked across together. When we reached the end of the bridge, a huge screen appeared. It was playing a loop of my photos and various videos of me. There were videos of me playing basketball, running, accepting awards. Sarah couldn't help but joke. "Are you trying to show me your past? Or are you trying to win me over with your good looks?" Just as she finished speaking, a sweet, playful voice rang out. Chapter 17, Daniel. "We've always been good childhood friends. I've always known how much you care for me. Before, I made a mistake and lost you. Now, it's my turn to be good to you and bring you back. I like you. Will you be my boyfriend?" Veronica, dressed in a white gown, held a bouquet of red roses and gazed at me lovingly. As soon as Sarah saw Veronica, the smile on her face disappeared. It turned out that this whole romantic setup was something Veronica had planned for me, and she foolishly thought that she was about to be happy. She had always known that I had a secret crush on her. Now, seeing the woman I loved confessing to me, I must be overjoyed, right? Thinking this, Sarah silently put down the roses she was holding and pulled her hand from mine. I sensed the shift in Sarah's emotions. Without hesitation, I took her hand again, holding it tightly so she couldn't pull away. I looked at Sarah, who seemed a little lost, and smiled. Then, I raised our hands, still tightly entwined, so Veronica could see. I said, "Veronica, I don't know what kind of shock you've had, but I don't care whether it's because of Alexander or some unresolved feelings. I don't want to know. I only know that the person by my side now is the one I love, and I will protect her for the rest of my life, with all that I am." Upon hearing this, Sarah's face brightened, her smile returning. Veronica, on the other hand, was in disbelief. She couldn't believe that I was rejecting her. Her eyes filled with tears as past memories flashed through her mind like a slideshow. With a trembling voice, she asked, "You've known her for just 2 days. How could you possibly like her? Even if you like her, it can't compare to the 20 years we've spent together, can it?" I looked at her coldly and replied, "We are just like siblings." Veronica held the bouquet to her chest, her eyes still brimming with tears, and looked at me desperately. She said, "You used to buy me crab roe soup dumplings every morning at the school gate. You used your scholarship to buy me the designer bags I liked. When I was bullied, you'd stand up for me, and when I cried, you were more heartbroken than I was. How can that just be sibling love? I don't believe it. You must like me. Don't marry her." "Okay, I know you're only marrying her to revive the family business. If it's money you need, I have it. I'll give you all the money my family has. I'll help you revive the family business." Veronica looked at me with hopeful eyes, wanting me to change my mind. Sarah, after hearing this, felt a pang of disappointment. She was self-aware enough to know that our relationship, having only begun a few days ago, couldn't possibly match the deep bond Veronica and I shared over 20 years. A large part of the reason I was willing to marry her was due to the support her family offered. Now that Veronica was willing to offer all her family's money to help me, Sarah was afraid I might waver. Sarah looked up at me, studying my expression, but she soon realized that I wasn't happy about Veronica's words. Instead, I was a bit angry. Seeing that I hadn't been swayed, Sarah's heart settled. I kept holding onto her hand tightly, offering her a sense of security. I turned to face Veronica, wanting to make things clear once and for all, especially in front of my fiancé, and put an end to this. I said, "I admit, I liked you before." At these words, Veronica smiled, Wiping the tears from the corners of her eyes, I continued. But ever since you got a boyfriend, I've completely given up. That one sentence was like a final blow, pulling Veronica into the depths of despair. She shook her head, wanting to explain. No, it's not like that. My relationship with Alexander isn't real. We're just... Before she could finish, I interrupted her. I've said it already. I'm not interested in your relationship. Veronica, why do you think I still like you now? All you've mentioned is how good I've been to you. All the things I've done for you, but what have you given me? What is there about you that's worthy of my love? My words were cold and harsh, and Veronica broke down in tears. She opened her mouth to explain, but as the words were on the tip of her tongue, she realized that perhaps, as I said, it was true. For all these years, she had only enjoyed my kindness. She was willful, spoiled, and hot-tempered, causing trouble wherever she went. In the end, it was always me who cleaned up her mess, solved all her problems, and she, it seemed, had only ever been a source of trouble, never bringing anything positive into my life. She really didn't deserve my love. Chapter 18. Veronica soon realized the truth and stopped speaking. She looked at the hands of Sarah and me, tightly intertwined, and whispered, "Brother, I wish you happiness." With that, the roses she was holding fell to the ground, and she resolutely turned away. Despite the pain in her heart, she didn't look back. She was afraid she might not be able to stop herself and might try to take me away. Sarah bent down, picked up the roses, and handed them to me. In a soft voice, she said, "This bouquet was meant for you anyway. Take it." I lowered my head and gazed at Sarah, who was always smiling, and a pang of tenderness filled my heart. I pulled Sarah into my arms, gently saying, "Sarah, you're my fiancée. You don't have to be so understanding. You can get jealous. You can question me. I want to give you a sense of security." Upon hearing this, Sarah started to cry. She grasped my arm, sobbing as she said, I'm afraid that one day you might suddenly not want me anymore." I gently patted her back, comforting her. "It won't happen. Trust me. Now that I've chosen you, I'll always take care of you." I comforted Sarah for as long as she cried. I didn't know how long it passed, but eventually, through her sobs, Sarah fell asleep in my arms. With a soft smile, I gently picked her up and carried her home. I used Sarah's fingerprint to unlock the door, then carried her to the bedroom. After covering her with a blanket, I saw that she was sleeping soundly, and only then did I quietly leave. I hadn't realized that Sarah lived alone. She seemed so delicate and fragile. It was hard to imagine that she could take care of herself. What I didn't know was that although Sarah came from a good family, she had never received love from her parents. Not long ago, she had defied her parents' objections and insisted on being with me, which angered her father and mother. As a result, they had kicked her out, and she had to live on her own. When I returned home, I was surprised to find my mother sitting upright in the living room, waiting for me. I asked, "Mom, what's going on?" I had a bad feeling in my heart, as though something was about to happen. My mother looked at me seriously, her tone urgent as she said, "You and Sarah need to get married soon." She had noticed something off about Veronica recently, and after this morning's events, she was worried that delays might lead to more trouble. I lowered my head, deep in thought. I felt that Sarah didn't have a strong sense of security right now. Perhaps a romantic wedding would be more effective than any flirtatious words. With that thought, I nodded. Sarah had been busy with company matters and hadn't had much time to spend with me, so I focused on preparing a surprise for her. By 6 p.m., I went to pick Sarah up from work, and we had dinner, took a walk, and chatted. A month later, after Sarah's work had calmed down, it was just in time for the weekend. I secretly took Sarah to an open grassy area, covering her eyes the entire way, making her heart race with excitement. Once we stopped, Sarah softly asked, "Are we there yet?" I smiled and responded, "Yes, open your eyes." Sarah obediently opened her eyes, and before her stood a vast sea of ice blue roses. Beneath her feet was a red carpet leading toward a flower path. Fireworks lit up the sky, spelling out, "Sarah, I love you," in brilliant colors. My voice echoed in Sarah's ear as I said, "Sarah, I can't deny it. My heart beats for you. You might find it hard to believe that I love you so quickly, but I just want to say, love happens in an instant. Just like many years ago, you fell in love with me because of a single glance in a narrow alley, and I, on the night of September 10th at 11 o'clock, fell in love with you because of a single kiss." I looked at Sarah with deep affection, sincere and resolute, and said, "Sarah, will you marry me?" The gentle breeze by the river, the dazzling fireworks reflecting in the water, my vow resonating in her ears, it felt like a dream. Sarah, overjoyed, covered her face with her hands and quickly nodded. She said, "I do." 1 month later, in the most luxurious hotel in the South City, the solemn and pure ivory white, paired with elegant gold, created an atmosphere of grace. Crystal chandeliers with intricate floral designs cast soft light, illuminating Sarah's custom-made wedding dress, making love seem to swirl in the golden glow. Sarah smiled at me, and every glance seemed to say, "I do." The guests were our close friends and family, all there to celebrate our union. As the wedding march began, the host's voice sounded. "Lady, no matter if he is rich or poor, do you promise to walk with him through life, never to part, and grow old together?" Happiness sparkled in Sarah's eyes as she urgently replied, "I do." The host turned to me, asking, "Sir, no matter if Sarah is rich or poor, do you promise to walk with her through life, never to part, and grow old together?" I smiled, my lips curving upward, and slowly opened my mouth to say, "I." However, before I could finish, Kevin suddenly ran up onto the stage, interrupting me. His expression was tense as he shouted, "Something's wrong." Chapter 19. With that, Kevin firmly pulled me away. Seeing this, my mother immediately sprang to her feet. After comforting Sarah for a moment, she quickly followed us. I furrowed my brow and asked sternly, "What's going on?" "Today is my wedding day, the happiest day of my life. What could be more important than this?" This was the first time I was angry with my good friend. I always thought Kevin was a reasonable person, so I couldn't understand why he couldn't see the urgency of the situation. Kevin didn't argue with me but instead took my phone and held it up in front of me. Since my groom's outfit didn't have any pockets, I had placed the phone with Kevin. To my surprise, it was a threatening message from Alexander. He had sent a photo of Veronica, taped up and bound in an abandoned factory. The message threatened that I had 1 hour to pay him $5 million, or he would kill her. Kevin knew this was supposed to be the most important day of my life, but a life was at stake, and there was no other choice but to take this drastic measure. I took the phone and examined the photo closely. The fear and panic in Veronica's eyes didn't seem fake. This was real. My mother rushed over, hearing our conversation, and fell silent. It was indeed a tricky situation. I immediately dialed the number and spoke coldly. "Alexander, what kind of game are you playing? Isn't Veronica your fiancée? Kidnapping her to ask for money, are you out of your mind?" Alexander let out a strange laugh before calmly explaining. "Fiancé, didn't she tell you? It's all fake between us. She just wanted to test you and force you to confess." Hearing this, my heart tightened. I murmured, "She wanted to force me to confess. She likes me." Alexander's voice came again. He said, "I don't care about your love life. I just want the money. An hour from now, if you don't deliver $5 million to this factory, I'll kill her. Oh, and a little warning, don't even think about calling the cops. If you do, I'll make sure Veronica dies with me." With that, Alexander hung up. Kevin swallowed nervously, hesitated for a moment, and then asked, "Are you going to save her? But Sarah is still waiting for you up there." At that moment, Sarah appeared at the doorway, holding up her wedding dress. She had been standing by the wall, and had overheard everything Kevin and I had said. Sarah smiled gracefully, tears still shimmering in her eyes. She tried to appear calm and said, "It's okay, go save her. Life is more important than a wedding." Hearing this, my mother looked at Sarah with concern. Sometimes she felt that this child was too sensible for her own good. Meanwhile, Kevin, hearing Sarah's words, couldn't stop praising her for her grace, maturity, and understanding. He used nearly every complimentary word there was to describe her. I looked at her deeply, a sense of guilt swelling in my chest. Every woman dreams of wearing the most beautiful wedding dress, looking stunning, and marrying the one she loves on her wedding day. But now, I had ruined all of that for Sarah. Even though it wasn't my intention, I still couldn't escape being the one responsible. In the next moment, Veronica's terrified face appeared in my mind again. Chapter 20. I rushed over and embraced Sarah, whispering in her ear, "Sarah, thank you. Please wait for me to come back. Wait for me to marry you." After that, I entrusted Sarah to my mother and ran out the door. After withdrawing $5 million from the bank, I drove to the abandoned factory. My phone rang. It was Alexander calling. I answered the call and held the phone to my ear. Alexander's voice came through. "I see you. I'll give you credit for being smart. You didn't bring anyone with you." Alexander was upstairs, watching my every move. He continued, "Better stay calm. Everything you do is under my control. Now, walk to your left, all the way to the end. Then open the door and come up to the 3rd floor." I followed his instructions, reaching the 3rd floor where I saw Veronica tied to a pillar in the middle of the room, and Alexander not far off, holding a fruit knife and waving it around. When he saw me, Alexander raised an eyebrow and laughed. He said, "Getting married today, huh?" Looking so formal, I glared at him, not wanting to say another word, and tossed the money toward him. "I've brought the money. Now, release her." Hearing this, Alexander cautiously approached the money bag, checked it over, and, seeing there was no trick, nodded. He said, "You can take her, but not right now. If I let you go first, and you immediately call the cops on me, That would be a big problem. I gritted my teeth and coldly replied, "What do you want then?" Alexander stroked his chin and thought for a moment before saying, "Well, you go downstairs first. After I leave, you can come back up and untie her." I squinted, and without thinking, I refused. "No, what if you hurt her while I'm gone?" Alexander, who was rejected, became agitated. He waved the fruit knife at me and shouted, "What gives you the right to negotiate with me? She's in my hands. I do as I please. Otherwise, I'll kill her." He aggressively pressed the fruit knife against Veronica's neck. A slight motion, and blood would flow. Veronica looked at me in horror, tears streaming down her face. To ensure her safety, I could only nod and slowly take a step back. Only then did Alexander relax and lower the knife. Just then, a black figure suddenly dashed out from the stairwell. With swift movements, it pounced on Alexander. He was caught off guard, knocked to the ground, and the fruit knife flew several meters away. By the time the police arrived and cuffed him, Alexander was still shouting insults at me. "Damn you, you're a real piece of work, calling the cops." I raised an eyebrow and smiled, shrugging helplessly. Everyone has their expertise. When it comes to professional matters, you need to leave it to the professionals. On my way to get the money, I had already called the police. Otherwise, withdrawing such a large sum of cash would have been a problem in itself. This was all part of the plan, to cooperate with the police. Veronica and I were called in to make statements. By the time we left the police station, it was already 2 in the afternoon. Alexander was charged with kidnapping and extortion. He had a criminal record for gambling, and with the additional charges, he was sentenced to 5 years in prison. I breathed in the fresh air outside, unable to suppress a sigh. I thought the wedding must have already ended, and Sarah must have gone home by now. Feeling my emotions, Veronica grabbed my arm and said earnestly, "Daniel, you like me, and I like you. Since you missed your wedding with Sarah, how about this? Let's get married." "Okay. You were willing to drop everything and save me. That shows you care for me, probably more than you care for her. You can't keep lying to yourself, and I can't either. Let's get married." "Okay." After experiencing such a life-or-death situation, she finally realized how important it was to hold on to the things that were truly worth cherishing. Chapter 21. I pulled my arm away and coldly said, "I saved you because you're my sister. Life is more important than the wedding. You only get one life, but a wedding can be rescheduled. Sarah also supports my decision to save you. She's half your benefactor." The things you just said, I hope that's the last time I hear them. I don't want to make Sarah sad. After that, I turned and walked to the car. Veronica watched me leave, her heart feeling like it was being torn apart. But she couldn't blame anyone but herself. She had pushed me away with her own hands. When I arrived at the wedding venue, the banquet hall was eerily silent. I nervously swallowed, feeling like my worst fear had come true. But then I quickly reasoned with myself. I had left my bride behind. What right did I have to ask everyone and Sarah to wait for me? I walked dejectedly into the hall. "You're back," Sarah's gentle voice sounded. Hearing that, my eyes lit up. I looked up, and there she was, still wearing the white wedding dress, standing on the stage, with all the guests present. I was a little surprised, confused as to what was happening. I asked, "What's going on?" Sarah smiled and replied, "To be honest, I told them that my sister had been kidnapped, and my husband went to save her, so the wedding was delayed." I looked at the guests below the stage, then at Sarah, and my eyes welled up. How could she be so understanding? She had said all that to prevent others from criticizing me, even making it sound like she was helping save her sister. My heart melted in that instant, and I swore I would love Sarah for the rest of my life. The guests in the hall raised their thumbs and praised me. "We understand, it's a life-or-death situation. You're a true hero. Since nothing's happening today, we can eat, drink, and enjoy watching your happiness." "Host, what are you waiting for? Get on with it." The host, who had been frozen for a moment, finally came to his senses. He looked at me and said, "Sir, do you take Sarah, whether in poverty or wealth, to be your lawful wedded wife, to love, cherish, and never forsake her, until death do you part?" I took Sarah's hand and nodded seriously. "I do." This time, no one interrupted us. We smoothly completed the wedding ceremony and exchanged rings. A round of applause followed, and amidst the cheers, we shared a passionate kiss. The following month, we went on a sweet honeymoon, traveling to different parts of the world to experience the local culture. Under the Eiffel Tower, Sarah finally confessed her secret. She said, "Actually, on our wedding day, I was so scared you wouldn't come back, but you told me to wait, so I waited. Fortunately, you came back." A gentle breeze blew, lifting a strand of hair and brushing across my face. I tenderly stroked Sarah's cheek and seriously said, "Actually, on our wedding day, I was also afraid that you wouldn't want to wait for me, but you waited, and I vowed to love you for the rest of my life." With that, we exchanged a smile and embraced each other. After the honeymoon ended, we returned to our normal lives. Sarah had just taken over the family business and was still learning the ropes. She had secretly married me without informing her parents, which infuriated them. They looked down on my family's company, which was on the brink of bankruptcy, and because Sarah insisted on marrying me, she faced constant pressure from some old stubborn employees. When I found out, my heart ached, and I hugged her tightly, promising that I would build the Law family business into the strongest it could be, so her parents would see that their daughter had made the right choice. 6 months later, Veronica returned to the northern city, but she was lost and disoriented. Lou's mother was also worried, but since it involved young love, there was little she could say. Instead, she sent Veronica a large sum of money and suggested she take a trip to clear her mind. Veronica aimlessly drove through different cities, unable to find any place that made her want to stay longer than a day. She visited various tourist spots, checking in like it was a task, sending photos to Lou's mother to reassure her. She realized that I had been right all along. She had become accustomed to demanding things, proud and rude, ignoring the feelings of those who truly cared for her. She couldn't go on like this, but my situation still haunted her. She often asked Kevin, "Do you think if I hadn't listened to Alexander's advice and hadn't pretended to be his girlfriend, would I be with Daniel now?" Kevin, seeing Veronica's disheartened state every day, felt a pang of sympathy. After thinking for a long time, he finally decided to tell her the truth. Chapter 22. Kevin sent a message to Veronica. "Actually, before you got together with Alexander, Daniel had already been preparing a romantic confession for you, but on the day he was going to confess, he was all excited, ring in hand, ready to find you, but when he did, he saw you with Alexander." Hearing this, Veronica suddenly remembered the small box Daniel had been holding that day. She couldn't believe it, covering her mouth in shock, and immediately called Kevin. She asked, "Is this true? He was going to confess to me that day?" Kevin took the call and calmly replied, "Yeah." Veronica, suddenly overwhelmed with excitement, stammered, "Then, so, he loves me, why didn't he want to be with me?" She had confessed to him that her relationship with Alexander was fake, so why wouldn't Daniel accept her? There was silence on the other end for a moment. Finally, Kevin spoke up. "Maybe life is like a drama, full of missed opportunities. When he thought you didn't love him, he forced himself to let go. Then, he was healed by someone else and unknowingly fell in love with her. Everything's in the past now. Let it go," he advised. "He's found someone who loves him more. You should wish him happiness." On the other end of the phone, Veronica's crying could be heard. She regretted what she had done, and at the same time, she wondered if Daniel and she had really been together. Maybe she wouldn't have been as happy as she was now. In terms of being a good wife, she knew she was no match for Sarah. After going through all these events, Veronica had grown a lot. After returning to the northern city, she learned to cook a few dishes from Lou's mother. She didn't want to be someone who only took from others. She also wanted to try and bring warmth to the people she loved. When Lou's mother came home and saw her daughter cooking, her smile nearly reached her ears. Veronica smiled and sat her mother down, serving her a few dishes. She said, "Mom, try this." Lou's mother eagerly picked up her chopsticks, tasted the food, and gave a thumbs up, praising, delicious. My daughter has grown up." Lou's mother looked at Veronica with a satisfied gaze. After everything that had happened, her daughter had become more mature, more caring for others, and she was genuinely happy for her. Another month passed, and with the financial support Sarah had given me, my business was thriving. I felt that after being married to Sarah for half a year, I had not yet met my father-in-law, which felt disrespectful. Sarah, too, was not welcomed by her family for marrying me. I had always felt bad about that. Now that my career was growing, I felt confident and wanted to take Sarah back to meet her parents. Driving a blue Ferrari to the Lee family villa, I was immediately hit with a heavy, solemn atmosphere. Sarah instinctively tightened her grip on my clothes. I turned to her and gave her a reassuring smile, holding her small, fair hand tightly in mine to give her a sense of security. I said, "It's okay, don't worry, I'm here. Everything's going to be fine." Hearing my gentle words, Sarah managed a weak smile, took a deep breath, and linked her arm with mine as we walked inside together. Though she was the daughter of the Lee family, the favored one who had grown up with attention, Sarah never liked this identity. The pressure of being the heir of the Lee family was immense. She had to learn all kinds of formalities. Every action had to be precise, as if measured with a ruler. She had to learn various talents: piano, guzheng, Chinese dance. Her parents demanded perfection in everything, and if she didn't do her best, she would be punished by not being allowed to eat for a day. Over time, Sarah began to feel that this so-called home was suffocating, nowhere near as happy as when she had been attending high school in the northern city. As we entered, we saw Mr. and Mrs. Lee sitting at the dinner table, eating quietly, with 4 nannies standing nearby, refilling their wine glasses. "Dad, Mom," Sarah and I stood at the door for a long time, but they didn't acknowledge us. Sarah's face turned pale, and she pulled my hand, ready to turn and leave. She had already told them she would be coming back with me, but they still ignored us. Since they didn't show any respect, she felt there was no need to keep up appearances. Just as Sarah took a step toward leaving, I grabbed her hand and pulled her back. Chapter 23. I looked at Mr. and Mrs. Lee and raised my voice. I know you've never wanted to acknowledge me as your son-in-law because our law family's business is on the verge of bankruptcy. You think I'm not good enough for your precious daughter. Upon hearing this, Mr. and Mrs. Lee stopped eating and put down their chopsticks. They coldly stared at me. Mr. Lee spoke first. That's right. But our silly daughter is determined to be with you. Does that mean, just because we don't approve of you, you're going to give her back to us? I tightly grasped Sarah's hand and said firmly, Sarah is my one true love, and I will never give up on her. This has nothing to do with being your daughter. As soon as I finished speaking, Mr. Lee slammed his hand on the table in frustration. He dismissed the nannies and scolded me harshly. Unless you can become more successful than the Lee family, what makes you think you're worthy of marrying my precious daughter? Is it just because you have a small company worth only a few million? Sarah wanted to speak up for me, but Mrs. Lee pulled her aside. She looked at Sarah and said earnestly, Sweetheart, I know you truly love Daniel, but you've been pampered your whole life. If he doesn't become better than us, how can your father and I feel at ease giving you to him? Your father is only trying to push him a little. He doesn't really want to break you two apart. Otherwise, do you think we would have been so indifferent when you two got married? When Sarah realized the good intentions behind Mr. and Mrs. Lee's actions, she was touched and shed tears. She embraced Mrs. Lee, feeling relieved. It turned out they didn't not love her. They just had been strict with her. On the other hand, facing Mr. Lee's rebuke, I set a goal for myself. I said, 3 years. Give me 3 years, and I will raise Law's market value to 500 million. After speaking, I took Sarah's hand and left. For the next 3 years, I worked hard every day, putting in extra hours, attending social events. Sarah was heartbroken for me and would always go home to plead with Mr. and Mrs. Lee. But Mr. and Mrs. Lee were very stubborn. They said this was my goal, and if I didn't achieve it, they wouldn't acknowledge me as their son-in-law. After 3 years of relentless effort, I finally increased Law's market value to 500 million, and I became the wealthiest man in the southern city. At last, Mr. and Mrs. Lee accepted me as their son-in-law. 2 years later, Sarah and I had a pair of adorable fraternal twins. On the day of the baby's full-month celebration, Veronica appeared uninvited, standing off to the side, quietly observing my happiness. Seeing me smiling so joyfully, Veronica couldn't help but tilt her head and smile as well. Such is life. When you miss an opportunity, it's as if you miss a lifetime. She took a deep breath, put on her sunglasses, and silently left. After the full-month celebration, Sarah glanced at the gift list and curiously asked, Why is there an anonymous donation of 5 million on this list? Hearing this, I walked over, glanced at the list, and thought for a moment before calmly saying, It must be from our sister. Upon hearing this, Sarah laughed and cuddled up in my arms, holding me tightly. Our babies were peacefully sleeping in the crib beside us.